Welcome, listeners. I'm Silas, your sleepy storyteller, pulling you down the rabbit hole of time, where dreams and memories intertwine. If you enjoy these videos, please tap the like button. It really helps. Also, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can keep drifting along on your sleepy journey through history. And before we wander down the rabbit hole, share your city and time in the comments. I love imagining our journey threading through every ticking clock. Now, take a moment to find a comfortable resting position. Close your eyes gently, and in your own time, allow yourself to sink into the quiet atmosphere of the past as we begin our slow journey together. Dawn trembles across the horizon, like the soft unfurling of a scroll, its edges written in pink and copper. The last shreds of night cling to the rooftops outside Athens, and the stars yield reluctantly to the waking sun. The air is cool, touched with the faint tang of hearth smoke from scattered farmsteads beyond the walls. Ahead rises the Dippolon Gate, the grand western entrance into Athens. Even at this early hour, the road leading to it stirs faintly with life. A farmer drives a cart of olives toward the city. A traveler with dust on his cloak approaches from Eleusis. A small cluster of priests gather their robes in preparation for the morning procession. All must pass this way, beneath the twin arches that guard the city like colossal sentinels. The stone of the gate glows faintly in the first light, massive blocks fitted tight, its towers squared and unyielding. This was more than an entrance. It was Athens' threshold, between outer life and inner life, between the dusty roads of Greece and the pulse of the polis. To step through it was to cross into the realm of ideas, politics, and philosophy itself. And yet, before the traveler reached the city proper, there was another passage to make, a passage through memory, loss, and the ever-present reminder of mortality. For directly outside the Dippolon lay the Kerameikos Cemetery. I step into it slowly. The morning silence hangs heavy, broken only by the soft coo of doves resting on marble stelae. The road here is flanked by monuments to the dead, stone columns, carved reliefs, and small shrines that whisper the names of those who came before. Some figures are simple: a mother clasping her child, a youth holding his horse's reins, gestures frozen in stone. Others are grand, with tall pillars crowned by urns or figures of lions watching in eternal stillness. The Kerameikos is vast, stretching in quiet dignity along the sacred way. Here lie generals, artisans, statesmen, and ordinary Athenians alike. The stones do not distinguish between them. The earth swallows equally. As I walk, the first rays of the sun lengthen shadows across the inscriptions. The names, though ancient, feel close, almost warm. They remind every passerby that Athens, despite its brilliance, is a city of mortals. The early Stoics, whose voices would soon echo from the painted porch, would have recognized the wisdom in this place. Memento mori, remember that you must die. It was not meant as cruelty, but as clarity. For what better teacher of value than the certainty of an ending? To remember death is to remember life's urgency. wealth will fade, health will falter, reputations will be forgotten, but virtue, the quality of how we live, remains within our power. These monuments remind us that each passerby, no matter how mighty, once drew breath as we do now, and their breaths ended as ours will. The Stoics did not flinch from this truth. They embraced it. They called it the key to living well. Walking through Keramakos, I feel it keenly. The air itself seems sharpened by silence, as if every step echoes louder in the company of so many endings. The dawn light falls upon the carved marble figures, and for a moment they seem almost alive. Faces softened by sunlight, hands reaching, eyes gazing forward. Then the light shifts, and they return to stillness. But death here was never only grief. The Keramakos was also the starting place of Athens' grandest processions, the Panathenaic festival, where Athenians gathered to honor Athena, their guardian goddess. From this very gate, citizens would stream into the city, carrying offerings, banners, and the great woven robe for the statue of Athena. Musicians played, poets recited, and the whole city pulsed with ritual celebration. This is the duality the Stoics taught. Life is both solemn and joyous, grief and celebration entwined. To live well is not to escape sorrow, but to carry it with dignity while still embracing what is good. Just as the mourners here left offerings to their loved ones, Athenians also lifted their eyes to the Acropolis and sang hymns of glory. The cemetery and the festival road, death and life, were side by side. As the sun climbs higher, I watch the travelers passing through. A merchant in a stained cloak pauses at a grave stele, pressing his hand briefly against the stone. A soldier adjusts the strap of his shield as he strides toward the gate, his eyes forward, but his steps slowed by the monuments around him. A pair of women leave small garlands of flowers, the petals trembling in the morning breeze. This was Athens in 300 BCE, a city alive with ideas, yet always grounded by the reality of mortality. Every philosopher who entered, every merchant, every pilgrim, each had to walk the same road, to be reminded that no matter how high one climbed in discourse or ambition, all must meet the same end. And perhaps that was Athens' greatest wisdom, to place its reminder of death not hidden away, but at the very threshold of its gates. I linger before one stele carved with a simple scene, a seated woman extending her hand to a standing man. The sculptor captured not sorrow, but a moment of recognition, of farewell softened by love. The details, the folds of cloth, the tilt of the head still speak across centuries. I press my hand against the cool stone. It hums faintly in the morning air. The Stoics would say that grief is not caused by death itself, but by our judgments of it, our clinging to what cannot remain. But they would also remind us that love is no illusion, that virtue is found in how we treat those we cherish while they live. The cemetery holds both truths. The silence here is not only absence, it is memory, heavy and luminous at once. At last, I move toward the Dipylon gate itself. Its arches rise tall, framing the sky beyond. The city waits within, alive with markets, temples, and the stir of philosophy. Yet the Keramakos ensures no one forgets what lies at the end of every road. As I step beneath the gate's shadow, I think of the balance it represents. On one side, the living city, its noise, its ideas, its struggles and celebrations. On the other, the quiet stones of Keramakos, whispering that all of it is fleeting. To walk between them is to walk as the Stoics urged, eyes open to both life and death, embracing both as natural and necessary. The early light now floods the gate, gilding its stone. Travelers hurry onward, their footsteps quickening as they pass from silence into bustle. But the reminder lingers. Memento mori. Remember that you must die, not as a shadow over life, but as a lantern illuminating its worth. Athens demanded that all who entered remember this. And perhaps that is why philosophy found such fertile ground here. In the space between tomb and temple, between silence and debate, lies the question every human must face. How shall I live, knowing I must die? The Stoics offered their answer, not in denial, not in fear, but in acceptance, in love of fate, in virtue. To walk through Keramakos at dawn is to feel the weight of that truth, pressing gently but firmly on the soul. And with that weight carried firmly, I step through the Dippolon gate, into the waking city. The morning deepens as I step beyond the shadow of the Dippolon gate. Behind me lies Keramakos, where the stones of the dead whisper of endings. Before me stretches the sacred way, Athens' most storied road, glinting faintly in the strengthening light. The stones are uneven, worn by centuries of feet, pilgrims, traders, philosophers, soldiers, each pressing their weight into the same path. To walk here is to walk a seam-binding ritual to daily life, faith to civic order. At dawn, the road seems hushed, yet one can almost hear the echo of drums from the Panathenaic procession, the chant of priests carrying olive branches, the murmur of crowds moving toward Athena's temple. The air carries a sweetness, damp earth after the cool night, faint smoke rising from early fires, and the tang of olives pressed in nearby workshops. The sacred way is more than a route. It is a rhythm, guiding Athenians from ordinary life into the currents of the divine. The early Stoics taught that to live well was to live in accordance with nature, not merely the trees, rivers, and soil, but the larger rational order of the cosmos, the logos itself. The sacred way becomes, in its own manner, an emblem of that teaching. Just as this road ties the city to its rituals, so must we tie our lives to the great design that undergirds all things. To stray from it is to wander lost. To walk within it is to walk in harmony. Each stone beneath my feet, worn smooth by countless travelers, reminds me, a path is nothing unless it is walked. Philosophy, too, is nothing unless it is lived. I pause to watch a woman balancing a basket of figs. She sets her steps carefully, guided by the road, her path sure, because the way is sure. So it is with nature. Our lives find steadiness, not when we demand control, but when we align ourselves with the order already woven into existence. Shops near the road begin to stir. A potter wipes clay from his hands as he opens his stall. A shepherd drives goats toward the market. Children chase each other briefly before being called back by their mothers. The hum is gentle, almost shy, as if the city itself stretches in the light of dawn. The Stoics would remind us that these ordinary acts, selling, herding, playing, are no less part of nature than the rising of the sun. Each being fulfills its role. The potter shapes earth, the shepherd tends life, the child laughs. To live according to nature is not to reject these things, but to embrace them with reason and virtue. The sacred way curves toward the agora, Athens' civic heart. But before it reaches the bustle of trade and politics, a rocky hill rises to one side, stark against the brightening sky. The Areopagus. I turn and climb the rough stone steps, smoothed but uneven, carved long ago into the hill's flank. The rock gleams pink in dawn's glow, its crags sharp, its surface pitted with age. The climb is short but steep, and when I reach the top, Athens unfurls below me. From here, the city is a tapestry of light and shadow. The agora lies spread out, its stalls and stows just beginning to fill. Beyond it, the Acropolis rises, its temples already kissed by sunlight, gleaming white and gold. To the west, the long walls stretch toward Piraeus, faint in the haze. All of Athens lies visible, alive, and awake. This hill is more than a vantage point. It is the Areopagus, seat of ancient justice. Here, the council once met to deliberate on trials of murder and matters of sacred law. Here, Socrates himself stood accused of corrupting the youth, his calm reason set against the weight of accusation. The stones beneath my sandals have absorbed centuries of words, arguments of guilt, pleas for mercy, decrees of punishment. The air feels dense with their echo, as if justice itself lingers here, testing each new dawn. The Stoics taught that virtue alone is good, and among the virtues, justice holds its honored place. Justice is not merely law, but harmony, the alignment of human action with reason, fairness, and the order of nature itself. Here on the Areopagus, I feel the gravity of that teaching. These rocks once bore the weight of decisions that shaped lives, freed some, condemned others. Men spoke here not as isolated beings, but as citizens bound to one another, accountable to reason higher than their own desires. Justice, for the Stoics, was not an abstraction, but a way of living together. To cheat, to harm, to act in cruelty, these are deviations from the logos, disruptions of the harmony that holds the cosmos. To act with fairness is to move in step with the stars themselves. The sun breaks higher, gilding the agora below. The market will soon be filled with arguments over price, disputes over land, debates over politics. Yet here on the Areopagus, above the din, one feels the sobering truth. Justice must rise above quarrel and greed, just as this hill rises above the city. It is impossible to stand here and not recall Socrates. His trial was decades past, by 300 BCE, but his presence endures like a ghost. He stood here, accused, unshaken. He chose truth over fear, reason over safety, drinking the hemlock rather than fleeing into exile. The Stoics revered him, not as their founder, but as their exemplar. Zeno, who would soon teach in the Stoa, carried Socrates' example into the marrow of his thought. The conviction that virtue is sufficient for happiness, that no external, neither chains nor poison, can rob a man of the good life if he lives rightly. The stones of the Areopagus still seem warm with that defiance, that serenity in the face of judgment. They remind us that justice is not always triumph in the eyes of men, but alignment with truth in the eyes of reason. Looking back toward the sacred way, I see both currents of Athens, the sacred and the civic, woven tightly together. The same road that carries priests in procession also carries citizens to courts and markets. Ritual and reason, festival and law, both flow through the same veins of the city. So too does Stoicism bind its branches. Logic, to discern truth. Physics, to understand the natural order. Ethics, to live in harmony with it. Just as Athens wove ritual and justice into its daily life, the Stoics wove these strands into one unbroken philosophy. To live according to nature is not to retreat from the city or its disputes. It is to engage in them with reason, justice, and calm, aligning oneself with the logos even amid noise and uncertainty. The breeze rises, carrying the scents of olive oil, smoke, and salt from the distant sea. Below me, the agora begins to stir, with shouts and laughter. The sacred way gleams faintly in the sun, and here, on this height, the Areopagus reminds me that every path must lead not only through ritual, but through justice. Mortality waits in the stones of Keramakos. Harmony whispers in the sacred way. Justice speaks from the Areopagus. Together, they form the rhythm of life, fragile, fleeting, yet bound to something eternal. The Stoics saw this clearly. To live well is to walk the road of nature, to act with justice, to remember death, to embrace life. To stand here is to feel that truth pressed against the skin like the warmth of dawn. I take one last look at the city awakening, then turn my steps downward toward the agora, where philosophy itself waits to be lived. The path winds downward from the Areopagus, the rock of justice, toward the southern slopes of the Acropolis. Here, at the base of the sacred hill, lies one of Athens' greatest stages, the Theater of Dionysus. At dawn, it is quiet. The seats of stone rise in a wide semicircle, pale under the newborn sun, their edges roughened by centuries of sandals. The orchestra, once alive with drums and flute, lies empty, but in silence, memory stirs. This was the birthplace of tragedy itself. Here Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides gave voice to fate, suffering, and folly. Here masks hid faces, and yet revealed truths too raw for bare flesh. The stone benches seem to hold their echoes. I almost hear the crowd, murmurs swelling into gasps, laughter breaking against tears, the chorus chanting of kings undone, of gods unseen, of mortals straining against destiny only to find themselves bound tighter by it. To the Stoics, fate is not a capricious god with dice in hand, but the rational order of the cosmos, unyielding and necessary. In the theater, Athenians watched characters rage, plead, or despair against fortune, yet the end always arrived as the playwright decreed. In this, the theater was not mere entertainment. It was philosophy and performance. I gaze at the empty stage and think, each of us plays our part. The farmer, the soldier, the merchant, the child, all move across life's stage until the final curtain falls. Some roles are short, some long. Some resplendent, some humble. But the worth of a play is not measured by its length, nor its costumes, but by the truth it conveys. The Stoics remind us, we do not control the script. We control only how we act the role given. To act with wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. This is enough. Whether cheered or jeered, whether robed in purple or rags, virtue alone makes the performance worthy. I trail my hand along one of the marble benches, smooth in places, pitted in others. It bears the weight of generations. Men once sat here hoping for catharsis, purging pity and terror through stories of Oedipus, of Agamemnon, of Medea. Their folly and anguish became mirrors, showing Athenians their own. Yet the lesson was not despair. The Stoics would say, suffering comes not from events themselves, but from our judgment of them. What appears tragedy to one may become endurance, wisdom, even peace to another. Beyond the stage, the hill rises steeply, crowned with the splendor of the Acropolis. Even in 300 BCE, decades after its Periclean glory, the Parthenon and its sister temples gleam. Columns thrust skyward, catching the sun like spears of marble fire. From below, the sight is overwhelming, wealth translated into stone, piety fused with civic pride, beauty so radiant it seems eternal, and yet the Stoics would whisper, these are but externals. Fame, wealth, beauty, reputation, what the Athenians exalted as proof of greatness, are indifferent in themselves. They can adorn life or mar it, but they do not touch virtue, which is the only true good. The Parthenon may gleam, but it cannot grant wisdom. Statues may tower, but they cannot bestow justice. Marble may endure, but it does not temper the soul. I think of the laughter and tears in the theater below. Kings and queens in those tragedies boasted of wealth, beauty, power, and all were swept away by fate. The audience saw it and wept. Yet outside the theater, they too boasted. They too pursued externals. How often we fail to learn the lesson before us. The Acropolis is magnificent, yes, but it is a mask of stone, no less than those worn in the theater. Its splendor dazzles the eye, but hides the truth. That empires crumble, temples crack, and fame fades like breath in the cold morning. From the base of the Acropolis, I hear the agora stirring louder now. Merchants are raising their stalls, spreading out bolts of cloth, arranging jars of oil, calling for buyers. The city is awakening into its clamor of wealth and want. I imagine Athenians filing from the theater after a tragedy, eyes red with tears, voices trembling with awe, only to haggle fiercely for figs or gossip about neighbors' reputations. They marveled at the fall of kings on stage, then returned to chase the same hollow prizes. The Stoics warned of this folly. To know and not to live is to be doubly blind. What good is it to see the fate of Oedipus or Agamemnon, yet still believe your silver drachma or your neighbor's praise makes you happy? It is like admiring the Parthenon while your own soul lies in ruin. The hill looms above me, dazzling in white stone. It is impossible not to feel awe. Even I, who know its impermanence, feel my chest tighten at the sight. The human heart is drawn to beauty, to splendor, to what seems eternal. And yet, I remind myself, it is only stone. The Stoics would not deny beauty, but they would strip it of illusion. To call it good or evil is error. It is indifferent. What matters is how we respond. Do we cling to it, fearful of loss, or do we admire it and let it go, as lightly as we breathe? The Parthenon may fall, the theater may crumble, Athens itself may fade into dust, but virtue endures, not in marble or fame, but in each moment of reasoned choice, each act aligned with nature's logos. I turn my gaze back to the theater below, silent now, empty of actors and masks. It too teaches. Applause dies, wealth vanishes, beauty crumbles. Only character, only virtue, survives the judgment of time. The sun climbs higher. Its rays now blaze against the marble, casting long shadows that stretch down toward the agora. Soon I will descend to that heart of noise and barter, to the place where philosophy itself wrestles with daily life. But here, at the foot of the Acropolis, and beside the silent theater, I pause. Fate is inexorable. Externals are fleeting. Human folly is endless. Yet amid it all, virtue stands like a compass pointing north. I step forward, leaving the echo of masks and the gleam of marble behind, carrying with me the Stoic truth. Applause and ruin are the same. Only the soul's virtue matters. The streets guide me eastward, away from the shadow of the Acropolis, into the wide expanse where minds, as much as bodies, are trained. The dawn air is cool here, scented faintly with olive oil and dust, and it carries the sound of young men's voices, philosophers and athletes alike gathering at the gymnasium. The building itself is sprawling, its colonnades stretching long and low, enclosing a central courtyard. Marble columns frame the open air, their surfaces smoothed by hands that have leaned and gestured here through decades of argument. Within, the dusty track gleams faintly in the angled light, footprints overlapping in an endless palimpsest of motion. Here, body and soul were believed to be shaped together. Men jog laps, their sandals kicking up powder. Others oil their limbs, stretching before the morning's contests. Yet beneath the exercise, another rhythm thrums. Debate, sharp and insistent, flowing like a second breath through the colonnades. I pause beneath a colonnade, letting the voices reach me. A group gathers in the corner, robes drawn around their shoulders, debating fiercely whether pleasure or virtue is the true measure of a good life. Their leader gestures emphatically, an Epicurean, I suspect, praising the absence of pain as the highest state. Another interrupts, invoking virtue above comfort, perhaps a cynic with fire in his eyes. Athens in this hour is no passive city, it is a forge. Here, the mind is tempered as the body is trained. Ideas clash like wrestlers in the sand, their sweat not of muscle but of thought. Zeno himself must have stood in places like this, listening first, then shaping his own vision. That philosophy is one, indivisible, yet branched into three disciplines as essential as breath itself. Logic, reasoning clear as sunlight. Physics, understanding nature's vast order, the logos that binds stars to stone. Ethics, the art of living well, aligning our choices with virtue, as muscles align with motion. Together, they form not fragments but a whole, as inseparable as body and soul. Just as athletes train every limb, the philosopher must train every branch of thought, for neglect in one leaves the whole weak. The voices swirl around me, and I hear in them echoes of the city itself. Plato once lectured at the academy not far from here, teaching the ascent of the soul toward truth. Aristotle paced his Lyceum, measuring life in categories and causes. And now, Zeno's circle gathers at the painted porch in the agora, hammering out the principles that will endure long after these stones have cracked. How alive the city is with argument, with questioning, with striving to pierce the veil of appearances. To walk through Athens at dawn is to walk through a classroom without walls. The city itself is a text, its people the letters, its debates the syntax of meaning. And yet, above the noise, the Stoics whisper. Reason is not for victory, but for harmony. One does not sharpen logic to win disputes, but to align judgment with truth. One does not study nature to enslave it, but to live as part of its flow. And one does not practice ethics for applause, but to walk upright even when unseen. Leaving the colonnade behind, I follow the street deeper into the city's heart. The agora stirs faintly to the north, but before it lies a marker more central still, the altar of the 12 gods. It stands in a small square, unassuming compared to the grandeur of the Acropolis, yet no less vital. Built centuries earlier, it served as the very navel of Athens, the place from which all distances were measured. To every traveler who set out from this city, the altar was the origin point, the reminder that no journey, whether afoot or thought, began nowhere. I approach slowly. The altar surface is worn, the inscriptions faint. Ashes cling faintly to the stone, residue of prayers once offered here to the gods who watched over the city's fate. Zeus, Hera, Apollo, Athena, and the rest. This was the center, the still point around which the whirling life of Athens revolved. The Stoics might see in this altar not merely a civic marker, but a metaphor for life itself. All things radiate from a single center, the Logos, the rational order that binds cosmos to man, man to nature, nature to God. Just as distances are measured from this altar, so too are lives measured against the standard of virtue. Logic is the path that clarifies. Physics is the path that situates us in the whole. Ethics is the path that directs our steps. They converge at the altar of reason, from which all distances, near or far, sacred or mundane, are traced. I place my hand on the cool stone. The city awakens around me. Footsteps echo in the lanes. Voices rise in greeting. The smell of bread drifts from an oven nearby. Life radiates outward in countless paths, but all return here, to the center, to the place of measure. So it is with philosophy. Arguments in the gymnasium may flare like sparks, but their meaning is judged against the center. Does this way of life align with nature? Does it lead to virtue? Does it bring the soul into harmony with the whole? The light has shifted while I stand here. Dawn is no longer tentative. The sun spills across the rooftops, gilding the Parthenon above, brightening the agora below. Shadows shorten, and Athens stretches into its day. Yet here, at this quiet altar, time seems suspended. I think of travelers setting out from this point, merchants to Piraeus, philosophers to distant schools, soldiers to war, each step measured, each road traced from here. And I think of the Stoic teaching, that our lives, too, radiate outward from a center. We may chase wealth, applause, even empire, but if we stray from virtue, we are lost. To live well is to live aligned with the Logos, to walk from the altar of reason and return to it with every choice. I breathe in the cool air and step back. The altar is behind me now, but its lesson clings. That philosophy, like a city, requires a center, and that from this center all life flows outward, connected, rational, whole. The narrow street opens suddenly into a courtyard where the sound of water greets me like a voice from the earth itself. The Acropolis fountain house rises here, its 9 spouts gushing into stone basins, the streams glimmering in the early light. At dawn, the city gathers in this place. Men and women shuffle forward with clay jars balanced on shoulders or hips. Children chase each other between the columns, their laughter mingling with the steady rush of water. The air is cool here, a relief from the dry dust of the roads. The mist from the spouts hangs in the air, catching the sunrise in a faint prism. As I dip my hand into the basin, the water clings cold to my skin before slipping away again, as if to remind me that even what sustains us cannot be grasped. This water is not only a necessity, but a lesson. The Stoics believe that nature provides according to its order, rational and divine. The Logos, the universal reason, flows as surely as this fountain. The Athenians may take their jars home, drink, wash, and cook, but they do not own the water. It is given to all, without favoritism, without judgment. So too with life itself. We live because the Logos sustains us. Yet many forget this, clinging to wealth or beauty as though such externals could quench the soul. The Stoic knows better. Water nourishes the body, but only virtue nourishes the spirit. Wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. These are the springs that never run dry. I watch as a young woman kneels, adjusting the strap of her amphora. Her fingers tremble from the weight, but she does not complain. Instead, she shifts, balances, and rises again with quiet strength. In that small act, I see a fragment of Stoic discipline: to endure with grace, to meet necessity without bitterness. Leaving the fountain house, I follow the current of people moving down toward the agora. The road is alive with footsteps, the hum of voices rising with the sun. Already I hear the clatter of hooves, the shouts of merchants, the deep murmur of a city gathering its strength for the day. The agora stretches before me, vast and open, its arcades framing the square like arms outstretched. Here, all of Athens converges, merchants with their goods, magistrates with their decrees, philosophers with their pupils, beggars with their empty bowls. It is chaos, yet a patterned chaos, like the movement of the heavens, each body following its orbit, each voice adding to the unending chorus. I pause near a stall heaped with figs, their skins glistening purple in the light. A man beside me counts coins into his palm, arguing over the price. Behind him, another complains loudly of taxes. Farther still, a slave carries baskets so heavy that his knees shake. Here, All externals are on display. Wealth is weighed in drachmas, reputation measured in fine robes or slaves at one side. Ambition gleams in the eyes of men, speaking too loudly, hoping the crowd hears. Envy follows in whispers as neighbors measure what one has against another. But to the Stoic, all of these things, wealth, poverty, health, reputation, are indifferent. They are neither good nor bad. Their value lies only in the use we make of them. The coin exchanged for figs can be a tool of sustenance or of greed. The robe may cloak virtue or vanity. The slave's burden may reveal cruelty or compassion in the master. The externals swirl around me, dazzling and distracting. Yet beneath them lies the simple truth. Virtue alone is the good. Vice alone the evil. Everything else is material for the soul to shape. Here in this very square, a shipwrecked merchant once stood. Zeno of Citium, his cargo lost, wandered the agora with little left but curiosity. He entered a bookseller's stall, read of Socrates, and asked where such men might be found. The answer led him to the cynic crates, and from there to the painted porch, where Stoicism itself was born. I imagine him now, standing among these same stalls, stripped of fortune, but not of spirit. His shipwreck could have been ruin. Instead, it became the beginning of wisdom. In his loss, he found philosophy. In chance, he found reason. In wreckage, he found virtue. Is this not amor fati, the love of fate, in its purest form? That even disaster can be welcomed, for it provides the material through which virtue grows? The agora itself bears witness. From spilled cargo came a philosophy that outlasted marble and empire alike. The square seethes with life. A fishmonger shouts, waving a silver-scaled catch still dripping from the sea. Children tug at mothers' sleeves, begging for honey cakes. Officials in crimson robes stride past, their sandals snapping against the stones. At the edge of the crowd, a small group gathers around a philosopher, his voice rising above the din as he argues about desire and discipline. It is chaos, yes, but not without form. The Stoics taught that the cosmos itself is such a place, ordered, though we may see only fragments. The agora is a mirror of that truth. To some, it is nothing but confusion, noise, and struggle. To the wise, it is a living whole, each act a part of the larger harmony. I stop at the very center of the square, where the ground bears the grooves of countless feet. Here, decisions are made. Here, lives shift in an instant. A sale, a decree, a chance meeting, each may turn a man's course forever. So it was for Zeno, and so it is for every soul. The agora offers wealth, loss, power, humiliation. But none of these define the man. Only his choices do. Stoicism insists, externals are the clay, reason is the sculptor. To live well is not to avoid fate, but to shape it with virtue. I close my eyes, and for a moment, the noise fades. I hear only the steady rush of the fountain behind me, water flowing without end, It is as though nature itself whispers the truth. Externals pass, but virtue endures. At the far end of the agora, I see the colonnade of the Stoa, the painted porch, waiting like a climax to this walk. Its walls gleam with painted panels of battles and myths, reminders of glory and tragedy alike. It is here that Zeno gathered his students. It is here that Stoicism was born in public view, accessible not only to scholars, but to anyone who paused to listen. Before I step toward it, I glance back once more. The fountain house murmurs of nature's gift, flowing freely to all. The agora clamors with the noise of wealth, ambition, and chatter. Both sustain life in their way, but neither provides a flourishing soul. For that, philosophy is needed. For that, only virtue suffices. And so I walk on, leaving the noise of the market behind, stepping toward the porch where wisdom awaits, where fate and reason will converge beneath painted walls and rising dawn. The agora quiets as dawn climbs higher, its first brilliance gilding the colonnades. Dust hangs in the air from carts that rattled through before sunrise, and the murmur of merchants softens for a moment as I approach the royal Stoa, the seat of law and justice. Its long columns rise with a sober dignity, less adorned than the grand temples above the Acropolis, but carrying their own authority. Here, the Archon Basilius, the magistrate charged with sacred duties, presides. Here laws are posted and disputes weighed, where ordinary Athenians might appeal to reason and order. The colonnade is plain compared to the Parthenon's marble crown, yet it carries a gravity more enduring than ornament. The weight of law, the bond of civic life. I step onto its stone floor. The air is cooler under the shade of its columns, the hum of the agora behind me now muffled. These stones have heard confessions, accusations, oaths sworn to the gods. They have carried the footsteps of judges and philosophers alike. To stand here is to feel the city's spine, its structure of order and accountability. The Stoics counted justice as one of the 4 cardinal virtues, alongside wisdom, courage, and temperance. And here, standing before the royal Stoa, that virtue feels tangible. Law is not always perfect, not always merciful, but its presence binds individuals into a whole greater than themselves. For the Stoics, justice was not merely legal, it was cosmic. It arose from the recognition that all human beings share reason, the divine spark of logos. To treat another unjustly is to violate the order of the universe itself. The Athenians may see law inscribed on stone slabs, but the Stoic sees it written deeper still, in the rational nature of every human soul. I run my hand along one of the columns. The stone is rougher than temple marble, worn by weather and by time. Yet its endurance reminds me, justice is not always elegant, but it is enduring. It may falter under human error, but its roots lie in the rational structure of the cosmos. Just as the stars keep their courses, so must we keep fairness as the compass of life. Leaving the royal Stoa, I cross the agora once more. The square brightens as the sun clears the horizon, throwing long shadows behind the statues and arcades. Ahead lies another Stoa, grander in its presence, shimmering with painted color even in the morning light. The Stoa Poikile, the painted porch. Its name comes from its decoration. Along its inner walls stretch vast panels, painted by the greatest artists of the age. They depict battles where Athenians triumphed over enemies, myths where gods mingled with mortals, struggles of fate and glory etched in vivid pigment. The panels are alive with movement. Horses rear, soldiers clash, heroes stride forward with eyes fixed on destiny. It is here that Zeno of Citium chose to gather his students. Not in a private garden, not behind temple doors, but in the open heart of the city, where all could hear. The painted porch became the school's name and its emblem, Stoicism. As I step beneath this colonnade, I imagine the scene centuries ago. Zeno, tall and austere, speaking in a calm but resonant tone. Around him gather Athenians of every kind, merchants with dust still on their sandals, students eager to argue, slaves listening quietly at the edges. Here, philosophy is not confined to scholars or kings. Here, it is for all. The Stoics believed wisdom was practical, not abstract. Logic gave clarity. Physics revealed the divine order of nature. But ethics, living well, was the ultimate goal. And so, fittingly, their lessons unfolded in the marketplace, amidst bargaining, disputes, laughter, and loss. To walk into the painted porch is to see philosophy made flesh. It is not marble alone that endures, but ideas. That virtue is the only true good. That fate is to be embraced. That reason guides the cosmos. And that every human being is a citizen of the same universal city. The panels around me blaze with glory. Victories over Persians, struggles of gods and men. They are monuments to externals, fame, triumph, conquest. Yet Zeno stood beneath them to remind his students that such things are fleeting. Wealth can crumble, reputation fade, cities fall. But virtue, wisdom, justice, courage, temperance remains untouched by fortune. I glance at a painted figure of a general, arm raised in victory, his soldiers cheering. To most, this is the height of glory. To the Stoic, it is only circumstance. For if the general acted with justice, his victory is good. If not, it is empty. The judgment rests not in the outcome, but in the virtue behind it. Even here, under the shade of the porch, the murmur of the agora seeps in. The bargaining, the laughter, the disputes. It is fitting. For Stoicism never withdrew from life. It embraced it. Philosophy was not an escape from the city, but a compass within it. As the sun strikes the painted walls, colors glow like fire. It feels as though the cosmos itself is speaking. Battles, laws, markets, fountains, homes, all are part of a single order, flowing from the same logos. The porch reminds me that philosophy does not reject these things, but places them in perspective. Wealth and loss, fame and obscurity, life and death, all are indifferent compared to virtue. Standing here, I feel the weight of history. From this colonnade, words were spoken that would echo across centuries, carried by Roman emperors, Christian fathers, and modern minds still seeking steadiness amidst turmoil. From Athens, a city of art, law, and debate, came not only marble temples, but a way of living that could outlast empire. Plato gave dialogues, Aristotle gave systems, Epicurus offered gardens of pleasure, but the Stoics gave endurance. They taught how to walk through fire without complaint, how to face grief without despair, how to meet fate with open arms. And it began here, where painted panels of battles became the backdrop for a new kind of struggle, the struggle to master oneself. I walk slowly down the length of the porch, trailing my hand along the cool stone of its columns. The paintings shimmer in the growing light, yet I know even paint will fade, marble will crack, cities will fall. What remains, what always remains, is virtue. At the far end of the Stoa, I pause and look back. Behind me lies the agora, the fountain, the gymnasium, the theater, the sacred way, the gates and tombs. Each step has carried me deeper into the life of Athens and into the soul of Stoicism. Now, here at the painted porch, the journey completes itself. Stoicism was born in the open air, among merchants and magistrates, between law and art, between wealth and ruin. It was never meant to be hidden. It was meant to be lived. And standing here, I feel the lesson still, to walk with reason, to live with virtue, to love fate, not as an abstract creed, but as a way of breathing, speaking, being. The porch falls silent. Dawn has fully risen. The city stirs to life, but within me, a stillness endures. The kind Zeno might have hoped his students carried with them into the clamor of the world. And so, here beneath the painted panels and the colonnade of Stoicism's birth, I end my walk. The stones are cool beneath my sandals, the air alive with the hum of life, the universe itself whispering the logos through every breath. Rest easy, friends. The rabbit hole of time holds many more slow steps. Until we meet again, Silas is signing off.